Hi, Marvelites. I'm Ryan, a.k.a. Agent M, host of This Week in Marvel.
And I'm Lorraine Cink from Earth's Mightiest Show.
And as you know, the world mourns the loss of Stan Lee this week. And you guys can read tons of stuff about his career, his work, and all that stuff. And we'll probably talk about that. But Lorraine and I have been at Marvel a long time, and we figured we'd just talk about some personal remembrances about Stan. Because we both interviewed him a bunch of times.
Yeah, I think we've both been super lucky to have that experience. I know it wasn't your first experience because Ryan's been here longer than me. But when I first found out I was going to interview Stan, it was a sort of last minute thing. They just happened to be able to fit in time with us at Comic-Con, at New York Comic-Con. And Ryan was like, "You good? You got this?" And I was like, starting to tear up, and he's like, "You're not going to cry during the interview, right?" And I was like, "No, I'm just very excited. I'm going to be cool when he gets here." And I ended up being cool when he got there. And he was so lovely and so fun, and he's just so funny and charming whenever you talk to him, and it's just constant, like when the camera is rolling or not, he's just as charming and fun.
Yeah. One of the interviews, I've interviewed him a bunch of times. One of them was in 2014 for our 75th anniversary. And he was by the office and he was visiting and stuff. And so we did an interview in our Hulk room here.
Oh, yeah.
Like we have a conference room that is the Hulk room. It's really cool. And we're in there and we talk about the 75th anniversary, some other stuff. We actually have the interview on YouTube. You guys can check it out. We finished the interview. It's 5-10 minutes, but it wasn't very long. Camera stopped rolling. Everybody starts breaking down. He's like, "Oh boy, I think he said, boy, that was good. You're a great interviewer." Something like, it was along those lines. And that was it. I was like, that made my year. I remember that so much. And like, I know he's been interviewed literally like probably 100,000 times, right? Like over 75 years in the business. And he probably told this to most, if not all the people we interviewed, but it meant so much. Like to hear Stan Lee say, "That was a great interview. That was a good job." Basically saying, "You're a good boy. I love you. You're the best." And that was the way I perceive it. It's always in my head.
No, I've had a very similar experience where when I've talked to him, he'll be like, "Thank you for interviewing me. You did a good job," or "That was so great." And there's something about it that does just feel like you've been blessed a little bit. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I do remember that first time I interviewed him. Also, at the end of the interview, we usually, off stage, off camera, we get a kind of a like last question, wrap it up from the producer. And I was just like, my last question is, "Can I hug you?" Which I don't think is necessarily like an appropriate question, but I didn't know if I would ever get to interview him again.
Sure.
And he had been such a part of my life. I think you feel such intimacy and such closeness to people where you read their words every week. And, that was the thing that was so magical about all of the, divorced of all of the amazing characters he created and his amazing writing contribution, was the man that he was in those back pages, talking about the bullpen and making you feel like you worked there and that you knew those people and they were your friends and they checked in with you every week and they cared about you and it was a conversation, So I did feel like, I was like, we've been having this one-sided conversation my whole life.
Yeah.
And now you're talking back to me and you can hear me when I talk back to you.
Yeah, it's not just me like, "Oh, Stan, that was great." Close the issue, get a sandwich. When he came by the office in 2014, he's walking around, he's making jokes.
Pleasure to see you. You happy here?
Oh, wonderful.
If you're not, don't tell me.
We have photos, this great photo of him holding Mjolnir. And, this is almost 5 years ago, so he's still in his 90s, but he is so sharp, so cool and funny. He's making jokes. He's talking about, this office is so great, and what we had back in my day, all this other stuff. He's joking with Nick Lowe, who, when I shared this with Nick, he was saying how it was the day he took over Spider-Man. And he had the man who created Spider-Man walk into his office and just chit-chat with him. What that means to someone is incredible. And Bill Roseman is showing him "Here, Stan, this is you created it as a Lego figure." And in the video, the best line is like, so we had an artist draw you as Lego, and Stan's like, oh, that's good. I'm glad it wasn't like a bricklayer or a plumber or something. Like he's like instantly making jokes.
Oh God, there's something about him that is so honest. I remember asking him towards the end of another Comic-Con interview, what's like one thing that you would do different or do more of? Because I can't imagine a thing he would do different in his life because he's done so many amazing things. And he looked me so square in the eye, and I can't remember if we were still rolling at this point even, because he just turned to me, made such direct eye contact with me, and he's like, I wish I would have written more women. And it was just such like it felt so special for me.
Yeah.
Like he was saying it for me, but also that he really meant it. And it was, just a moment like I really treasure.
Yeah.
And at the time I was like, ooh, I hope that was an okay question to ask. And I'm so glad that I did, you know. One of the great things is he comes to all the red carpets for the Marvel Studios films. And on the red carpet for Infinity War, I continue to be on Reddit for this. I did nothing but show up, but I asked Stan towards the end of our interview, just, is there anything you want to say to the fans? And he's infamously now said,
I want to thank them for having spent all these years coming to see my cameos and, of course, watching the movie with it.
Because he is just the funniest, most off the cuff. And he said it like it was nothing, just effortless.
Yeah.
And then he got on his jazzy scooter and just got out of there.
Got out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the years at Comic-Con we had, I think it might have been before you, we had the Odin's Throne from the first Thor film. Like we brought the whole throne that was our booth, and it was amazing, and everybody had pictures up there. Everyone. So I have these photos of Stan sitting on the throne, just like looking regal, majestic. There's one of him getting up and like, whoa! It's great. Like he lit up a room, and then I have another photo of him walking down and signing books for people in wheelchairs, and you can't see, all you see is Stan signing and talking to like these people. Right, Ironheart writer Eve Ewing, she tweeted out a picture of one of Stan's soapboxes from back in the day, which ties into what you were talking about before, it ties into right now about how Marvel was getting letters that, comics should be escapist and, blah, 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 like all the escapist media. And he's like, but, if the comics aren't saying something, there's no soul there. And so he wanted his stories to mean something, to say something to people, which I think is so important and resonates. And you think of a Marvel character and what, like, they're not perfect. The Marvel villains, we always talk about, like the villains and the heroes, they're so layered, and that was not the way it was when he started.
No, well, and I love that story that he tells. You can probably find it out in the world somewhere, but about his beloved wife Joni, when he was wrestling with how to write the Fantastic Four, and it was this sort of like big escapist sort of stories that people were telling, and he was like, I want to tell a family drama. I want people to have real emotional stakes, and I don't want it to just be, titans. I want it to have heart. And Joni just being like, well, write the story that you want to write, and what happens, happens. Yeah. And because of that, the Marvel Universe exists. And I mean, it's even just thinking about the sort of canon he created, not just in comics, but in fiction, is mind-blowing. Like a lot of the concepts that are now sort of like, how does time travel work in nerd world? Like a lot of that is based on Stan's work and like setting up sort of the like butterfly effects and things like that. Like none of that existed before Stan, and just the imprint he's left on science fiction is crazy. And I mean, and that all echoes into film and TV and obviously other comics, but just the whole world, it's different because of Stan,
Yeah. I have this, I was telling this to someone recently, when I was a kid, I mean, I remember when we were kids, the Marvel comics of like the early 90s, late 80s would have the sort of like a 3-sentence biography of a character at the first page, tell you exactly who they were, what their powers were, and it would be like, Peter Parker was a normal teenager, blah, 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 blah. And then it would say Stanley presents, ellipses, The Amazing Spider-Man, or whatever it was. But every month you would see Stanley presents, Stanley presents, Stanley presents. And that was a very early thing where I was like, oh, Stan is, he's ushering us into this wonderful world. And I had a friend when, we were so young, where we would make up our own stories and we would make our own Stanley Presents. So we would go to our local pool and there was this one dude who had a lot of back hair and he was one of the characters that we created out of, and we had a name for him, and we wrote
Stanley presents this guy from the pool with back hair.
100%. There was a woman with nails, all this stuff, but we had written these down. These were we were building stories based on what we knew Stan, his thoughts. That was what we were conveying. And so he's always been in my head.
I mean, it's still just so mind-blowing to me that comics kind of went from this entertainment medium of just, you get a nickel and you buy some pictures. But, you think about the X-Men and sort of the allegory for civil rights and the width of everything that you can encompass in that, from not just the emotional experience to sort of the relevance of it in society and just how rich it is, whether it's kids at a pool
Yeah.
or, an allegory for the civil rights movement.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even if you start thinking about the 60s, right? Just those stories, Rat-a-tat, all those things going on.
Between 61 and 65, the amount of characters that he co-created is insane.
Yeah, it's wild. It's a... Oh.
Don't cry.
I'm good. I'm good. It's incredible. We can't really cover... We wouldn't even try to cover his entire career.
It's been very long.
Yeah, and I think we would just get more rambly, but... We'd love for you guys to let us know your favorite Stanley stories or memories, or, even as I was posting pictures and stuff on Twitter, it was this one reporter was I remember the first time I met him, and I don't have any photos of it, or this thing, and just those, what are your remembrances? Let us know on, on Facebook and Twitter and all the places we do whatever we do. I don't know.
And if you have a favorite Stan's soapbox, please share it, because they're so excellent, and I feel like everyone should be reading them.
Heck yeah. Thanks for listening to us talk about Stan Lee. He was the man. I'm Ryan.
I'm Lorraine.
And this is Marvel.
Your universe.
Until next we meet, Excelsior!